Another edition here of We Talk Fantasy, the fantasy football podcast for Gozilla Media. Chet Davis is here on our visual side. You're going to hear the voice of the wonderful Kyle Ray. Visually, we're going to imagine what he looks like right now. So all good stuff, but we are prepping you for week one of the NFL fantasy football season. But before we get to that, some reminders from the Gozilla Media side. Do not forget, Thursday, we kick off the NFL season at Hooters on Wolf Road. Come join us to watch Ray's Bills take on the defending Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. 6:30 to 8 o'clock, Levac and Goz will be live. Come watch Thursday Night Football kickoff at Hooters on Wolf Road. That is your home for football season throughout, whether it's college or professional football season. Your spot, Hooters, Wolf Road. Don't forget to follow all the great social media channels as well. Content coming throughout the fall. And DraftKings, promo code 518. More information on that. Check out Godzilla Media Podcasts, DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, boys. I think we got to get into, before we talk about week one, before we talk about how rosters look, we've all done a bunch of fantasy drafts across the last week. And Chad, I'm going to start with you on this. What has been your overall reaction? We know you've done a lot of mocks and then league actual drafts. What's been your biggest reactions to this year's fantasy football drafts?
Once again, mocks are pointless. Honestly, I think they have some value just in giving you an idea of who's going to be available late. Who are some of those guys that may be available after the 5th, 6th round that you can pinpoint and write their name down. Once I have my core set, let me make sure I can poach these guys maybe ahead of some of my competitors. But in terms of doing mocks and trying to, I was joking with you guys in our 14-team Gozilla Media League, 14 teams, I swear it's almost impossible to mock because every mock draft is completely different. Sure, it's the same type of first round, but all it takes is one curveball or one guy or gal who has a similar draft strategy as you, who poaches your guys. And then it's like, you can't, I think what I've realized is you can't fall in love with an exact blueprint. You got to be ready to adjust because the guys that you like, other people are probably also circling on their draft boards as well. And so, that was kind of my big takeaway from Godzilla night was, man, why did I mock draft for 2 weeks? Because I accomplished nothing.
I found it insane how quickly the running back position just evaporated. And I think Chet and I were talking a little bit during the draft, and I think we got to like the 5th or 6th round, and we're both going, oh no, because there was not a single person left. And I thought I was doing some risky plays. However, I just realized too, I went back and looked. The trend was there were great quarterbacks left in the 9th round. I got Russell Wilson, I think, in the 9th round, 8th or 9th round, and I was scared because I was like, I'm taking risks here. But I found it insane that I was able to grab Devin Singletary 4th, 5th, 4th round, I think, and that is my RB2. And from there, I was like scratching to try to find something. So I know we talked a lot throughout this about how this is going to be an awesome wide receiver depth, but the whole thing where we talked about the running back depth falls off a cliff is very much true. And you'll also see, and it happened in the Godzilla League, people reached hard for those running backs. I think Dameon Pierce went in the 3rd round, 3rd or 4th round.
Pierce was 4th round in Godzilla and 2nd round in the
Dynasty
League. Yeah.
Yes, and that's the insanity about the running back this year is that cliff is there, and you're taking a flyer on a rookie running back who's going up to be a part of a terrible team. But again, he's an RB1. You had to take him.
Here are some of the names, just because I'm going to piggyback off that really quick, Kyle, with Pierce. He went ahead in these leagues, collectively. It wasn't the same in each of the Gozilla Media and the Dynasty League. Ahead of J.K. Dobbins, ahead of Cam Akers, ahead of David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs. Whoa, and that's what's fun, or on the contrary, can be frustrating about when you draft in that final week, which we all recommend because you want to avoid injuries, you want to avoid yada, yada, yada. However, the buzz gets out, and you maybe already knew about Pierce from his college days, and you knew there was a chance that he was going to compete in a very uncompetitive backfield. but the secret was out. Like once they cut Marlon Mack, he just skyrocketed up the draft boards. And now you're left with, am I going to be the team that reaches on a very unproven commodity and an offense that, sure, it had flashes under Mills last year, but it's not going to be a top tier offense. And so those teams that took that risk, man, you better hope it pays off, and it pays off early.
Yeah, the whole running back position overall, I think one of the biggest trends that I should say the reactions to the league is that I want to make sure now I'm keeping track of everybody's team. Like I maybe next year I need 7 windows because you start thinking like, okay, well, they got to take a running back here. It's like running back 17. I mean, he's going to get stuck with 25 if he doesn't go running back. Okay, maybe he's going 0 running back. Maybe he's just going to give up on the whole thing because you both mentioned there's a point where the quarterback value is just getting stupid. If it's the 7th or 8th round, you're like, I mean, I'm not taking the 27th running back or the 5th quarterback. I got to take a quarterback. This is not how I want to take the 5th, 6th, or 7th round. That's one of the biggest reactions to what I've seen. And to add to this running back theory, there's a significant drop-off of value after a certain round. It felt like in these 12 and 14 team leagues, both Dynasty and Gozilla, that when you get to the 12th round, man, it gets bad. I feel like we did this last year where we talked about the depth of benches in fantasy. But boy, you want to talk about rough. I mean, those bigger leagues, you just look at some of these guys like, I pulled the trigger on a kicker early in the Dynasty League because I'm like, I don't like anybody. Like, none of these guys are going to probably ever put up points for me. I'll take Justin Tucker right now because I know he's going to give me points. I'll take a defense early because I know it can't get hurt. And that was my new mindset where I'm like, the depth of fantasy, and it's not so much about the players who are actually putting up points, it's who can I trust in my lineup? And that has fallen off. And that's more about the NFL offenses now, like with more weapons and spreading the football around. But for fantasy, oh, man, it is so much more brutal than it used to be.
And I think we all agree our draft strategy is let's take the best available talent. Like I hate to fall into trends where, okay, running backs are going early. Let me get my now mid-level running back as opposed to getting a top-tier wide receiver or a top-tier tight end, maybe even a quarterback. But in that 14-team league, and Kyle alluded to this, do the math, guys. We all have to start at least 2 running backs. 2 times 14 is 28. That's 28 starters. There's 32 teams. Like, you're not getting any depth. There are teams who do not have a starting running back on their bench because the math doesn't add up. So that's where it does become very tough. And Kyle and I had a similar trajectory where we did go for the best available talent and maybe we got some better wide receivers, but it got to a point where we have to start a running back. Like, we got our RB1 and then RB2 was like, well, shoot, I got to pull the trigger at some point because you do not want to get to a point where you wait so long that you are starting a third down back or a backup. Like you got to get that eventually. And in those bigger leagues, it just becomes so much more difficult to wait on a position that's so thin.
Well, and then when you look at like who are those running backs at 29, 30, and 30, you got like a Miles Sanders. You've got I think Miles Sanders was one of the big ones that really stuck out to me in all these drafts. Miles Sanders was there.
Edmonds is a guy who I think people are kind of high on, but it's now his second team. And
I felt like Rashad Penny dropped quickly this year.
Yeah, and because the running backs that have rookies waiting in the wings, like Devin Singletary, it's like, all right, we know he's going to be the starter in week 1, but for how long? When will James Cook bite into too much? Same thing with Kenneth Walker in Seattle. How long is Penny going to be getting an RB1 workload? There was a lot of those guys. A.J. Dillon is another guy that's like, all right, is it going to be 50-50 this year? Is it going to swing more in favor of a healthier Aaron Jones out? So a lot of those guys where you're really hoping it pans out. Another, a lot of those committees, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson. You shrug at this point. You're like, who's going to get more carries? Who's going to get more run? And I don't think any of us know for sure.
Right.
I had one manager in one league who had to pick ahead of me who went 0 running back theory. Didn't take a running back till the 8th. And his running backs are Damian Harris and Rashad Penny. And you could really make a case they both could be 2 top 15 running backs and 2 both out of the top 40. Like that's how big the drop off is for those running backs. I know you guys both mentioned a bunch of names, and this is kind of a little improv off the top of your head, and it might be harder to think about in the various leagues you're in, but is there 1 or 2 players that either, you mentioned Pierce going high, but are there one or two players in any position that went far lower than you thought? And I'm going to lead off on this one because it's a little biased for me because they're two Buccaneers, Tom Brady and Leonard Fournette. Because you mentioned draft time and schedule and everything else. If we had a draft, I don't know, maybe before training camp or before Brady disappeared, like people would have taken those guys high. And now my team's called Larnard Fatnet. And even though he got in shape, like it still sits with me that Fournette got fat. And I don't know what I'm in a ton of leagues. He dipped. Projections were huge in a lot of leagues. Top 8 people ran away from Fournette, and Tom Brady, the same thing. You want to talk about consistency? I mean, he had a fantastic fantasy year last year. But people, because of the weird stuff that's going off the camp, those two guys jumped out to me as the biggest fallers that I was very surprised. And maybe that's a Buccaneer bias, but I don't think so. Of guys that was the biggest, whoa, I cannot believe they're still on the board and everyone's avoiding them.
Yeah, he fell to me in the second round. And I know I joked about the mocks, and he was usually in the mix, but there were some guys that I ranked ahead of Leonard. Because you don't want to have a guy where you're worried about, is he going to be in shape? And I think those have been nixed, and he's proved that he's gotten back to a slimmer Leonard Fournette. And if he can play like he did last year and playoff Lenny, gets to do the regular season Lenny, then yeah, I think you're looking at a guy that could easily crack the top 8 for the running back position. One quick one that I wrote down, I think you're all going to laugh when I say the name. And this is not a guy that went later than I thought. He went way earlier than I thought. Clyde Edwards-Helaire as pick number 4.
Whoa.
Matthew Davis, my brother. I don't know if he finally developed a time machine and he skipped to the end of the season and somehow found out that Clyde Edwards-Helaire rediscovers himself. He picked him number 4. Now, this is dynasty, so people have to realize the maximum that players could be kept would be 36. So you're looking at 36 of the top guys, but it's majority wide receivers that get kept and some of the top tier running backs. But he picked CEH ahead of Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, and Aaron Jones. And Leonard Fournette was a keeper, so he couldn't have done that. But that was the one where did not see that coming. But then you start to think about it. And I've done drafts since then. I'm doing my, Chet Davis experiment again, where I'm going to see how many leagues I can do and test different strategies. I texted you guys the 0 running back, the 0 wide receiver strategy. But maybe he is onto something with CEH. Like, I think we've all, all right, fooled me once, shame on me. You fooled me twice, right? But in an offense that no longer has Tyreek, has a lot of new pieces with Juju Smith-Schuster, MBS, Pacheco, is that how you say his name? I think it's Pacheco, the running back that was kind of the darling of preseason. But Clyde is one of the few guys that's like familiar in this offense. And maybe, and this is what my brother's defense was, Andy Reid finally goes back to his roots of, making sure that the run game is productive and get CEH in space in the passing game, more screens like LaShawn McCoy in Philadelphia. And some of the other running backs that have excelled under Coach Reid, whether it's did he have Jamal Charles?
Yes, I believe year 1.
The one that came to my mind after that. But hey, maybe he is. I would never have done that. But when you start kind of looking at it, you're like, maybe CEH gets close to being RB1 territory. I'm not fully bought in, but there are some writings on the wall that make sense for that to happen.
Yeah, I guess the one guy that I was shocked who fell, and I was trying to figure out where he fell to in our Yahoo League, and I can't find it. Terry McLaurin. I know that he has a very big quarterback question mark. It's impossible.
He was drafted in the 3rd round, Kyle.
Yeah, but in other leagues, in a Yahoo League,
yeah,
I think in my Coliseum League, he dropped to like the 5th round. So I knew there were some question marks around like what's the quarterback situation, and everybody was high on Terry. And I think when this originally came to my mind, it was like, they're going to say he's like a top 25 wide receiver or whatnot. I think he has potential to be up there, but I didn't want any part of him more because the quarterback situation. But just looking at all the drafts we talked about it earlier with the players available, I felt like Terry was one of those players that fell a little bit based on the talent that was available. When you look at the running backs and everything, so Terry McLaurin was one that I was a little surprised, but like in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there going, yeah, I kind of understand, but then at the same time, I'm like, but why? So
I had my fingers crossed in another league thinking, is he going to get to me? Is he going to get, he's going to get to me. This is unbelievable. He's going to get to Terry. I like how my voice is cracked right there like a cartoon too.
That was a nice little touch there. One for me that I have zero investment in, and every draft I ask myself, am I going to regret skipping over this player? And it's Amari Cooper. I know he has Jacoby Brissett for the first 11 games now, but he's an elite talent, and he does not have a lot of competition in Cleveland. The running back room is great there. But in terms of wide receivers, I mean, it's him and Donovan People-Jones. Like, is that the only other guy? I know there's a rookie that people are kind of high on. I can't. Bell, David Bell.
Yes.
Wow, pulled that out of nowhere. But like, would we be shocked if Amari Cooper put up big numbers? Kind of similar to, like people kind of skipped over Brandon Cooks last year just because he was on Houston. And it's like, listen, it's still an NFL team that's going to pass the football. Like, it's not like the Browns are not going to throw it. You can have a bad quarterback and still be a good wide receiver. We just mentioned Terry McLaurin. How many years has he done it with a bum at quarterback? So I think that's one where I'm like, am I going to look back on all of these drafts and I had a chance to get Amari Cooper in the 8th or 9th round? Like, he could have been my bench player and then he can work his way back into being a viable RB2. I think that's a guy where I didn't pull the trigger on him, but every draft I saw him sitting there around names that he has no right being next to, or they have no right being next to him, I should say. So I'm wondering if we're being a little too disrespectful of this situation.
Chet, you gave me a perfect segue because you're already thinking about Amari Cooper and if people are underestimating him and why some years, year after year, certain wide receivers don't get the love for whatever reason. That kind of it sets me up for that draft trend for 2023. So maybe one of the best advice we can always offer is that you can remember things that happened in the past and they can benefit. So many times fantasy football managers get so caught up in that 1 year and don't remember, oh yeah, it was 1 year he got injured or 1 year he had a bad season. We've got some trends we might be seeing coming in 2023 that I hope you can remember. But first, we got to tell you about Johnstone Supply in Troy. Fall is officially here. That means changes are coming to your home. Does your furnace need to be replaced, or are you looking for an upgrade for your heating system? Johnstone Supply in Troy can make your home heated properly for that colder weather on the way. Family owned and operated business, Johnstone Supply in Troy's been helping upstate New York residents for decades, and you can visit their store right now on 6th Avenue in Troy for more information on how they can help you this fall. Whether it's finding the proper change for your filters or making sure your home is heated properly for the new weather on the way, Johnstone Supply in Troy and their friendly staff, George and his crew, can make sure it happens for you. Shout out to Bird. Shout out to Fish, a.k.a. Birdfish. We've now nicknamed him 2 names over there, Kev and George and everybody. 518-272-5922. 518-272-5922. Johnstone Supply NY Troy on Facebook. Then it's Johnstone Supply in Troy. Part of it since day one, the mailbag and everything. No waiver wire, by the way. I know Johnstone always loves our waiver wire and mailbag. We're kind of recapping on this one. So, Chad, I'm going to go back to you on this one because you gave me a nice segue. So it'll be rewarded. So now I get to go first on this. Trends that you look at from this year that you believe can happen again this time next year.
Well, I think it's actually going to be a correction in the trends. I think it's going to be a down year across the board for rookies, which is more normal than we realize. Like, typically it takes rookies a little while to figure out the NFL, but it's I don't know if you want to call it the Jefferson Jamar effect, where these just absolute freaks at their position hit the ground running. And actually both those guys did have somewhat slow starts in their first month of the season before just completely taking off and having record-setting rookie years. I think we're going to catch ourselves a little bit. And we mentioned some of those names, Dameon Pierce, some of the wide receivers, whether it's Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or guys. I think we tend to reach for guys just because it's the hot new toy, where it's like, oh man, that guy, he was so good at college. All of them are good in college. That's why they're in the NFL. But we fall in love with the storyline and the buzz, and they get the most tweets and they get the most social media. And so I think this year we might have like oh yeah, maybe I should trust the guy who I know can do it. And as opposed to going in for the young 20-year-old, 21-year-old who's going to get thrown an offensive playbook they can barely read. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is going to be the year where we're going to be like, okay, maybe we chill a little bit. Dynasty is different. This is more so for redraft because, as we all know, sometimes in redraft projects don't work. Like, okay, it's cool if you draft a rookie who's great by week 17. You already lost. You already missed your
I love that. Yes.
playoff. Congratulations. You picked a guy who's going to be good next year. You know what I mean? Like, dynasty's different. Keeper leagues are different. But for redrafts, pick the guy that's going to help you win right now and get you into the playoffs.
I mean, Chet took a lot there, and a lot of it was very similar to what I was thinking from like the rookie standpoint. I think what I look at for this is I find myself every year looking at the mock drafts, looking at who's there, kind of trying to formulate, am I going to go RB, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver? I've got to start looking at getting in the mindset because this year, what I think was a prime example of mock drafts, Chet said it to start the podcast, mock drafts don't matter. Take the best that's available. Like, do yourself a favor. Like, unless you get in that pick where the best available is 4 consecutive wide receivers in a 2 wide receiver league, like maybe you have to change up your strategy a little bit. But take some of those best players that are available and make your team stronger. I know that one of my things last week with the podcast was that I need to take Kirk Cousins. Well, I missed on Kirk Cousins because I could have grabbed him. I needed a quarterback, and I could have grabbed him. But there were players available that I was like, I'm not going to sacrifice the league for Kirk Cousins. And I had a feeling that he could come back around. So, like, I think you need to look at that and kind of to the correction point. Stop thinking that you have to get this running back and you have to maximize your running back depth because, yeah, there are 32 running backs. And guess what? 20 of them are going to have good seasons and are going to be able to win your league. Guess what? If you have a 2 running back league and you're in a 12-team league, there's only 4 people that aren't going to be in that situation. And those other 12 are going to be flyers. And you have a chance of getting that. So I've got to get out of that mindset. I've got to still pay attention to the mock drafts so you have an idea of who could be in that general area. But look at that general area and take what's going to be best for your team, in my opinion. I think that's something that we need to start looking at when we're looking ahead to what's to come.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, don't get obsessed over, like, round 1, I'm going to take a running back. Round 2, I'm going to take a wide receiver. Round 3, I'm going to take a tight end. Because then if Kyle Pitts gets taken before you, you don't want to panic and then reach for George Kittle. Like, reassess. Be like, all right, I don't get my tight end that I wanted here, but there's amazing wide receiver talent that I didn't expect to be here. So let me get that, and I'll get tight end later. You know, like, that's where I agree with Kyle. You just have to make sure you're flexible, which is, I know it's too late of advice right now, but think about that next year. If you got into a point where you were upset of how you reacted to guys being taken ahead of you, just make sure you always just look at the big picture of your team.
Well, let's take that a step further, right? We're both kind of all talking about the same thing called roster fill. When you look at your top to bottom, the fill of how you do it, it feels like to me one of the trends that could be on the way, especially on how many flex positions you use. There might be one league that you have a super flex, a traditional flex, but now that wide receivers and tight ends, the wideouts are having so many more points than tight ends, and we see formations where tight ends are wide receivers. You could have a second flex. What I could really see happening in 2023 is that when you see those roster fills coming, and like both Chet and Kyle both said, like, hey, I need a tight end here in the 7th, or I need a flex in the 8th. I would not be stunned if people start taking a second quarterback and saying, you know what, if they get a great matchup, we'll use Ryan Tannehill just popped in my head, so I'll just use Tannehill. Let's say Tannehill gets the Texans and the Jags 4 times a season, and you've got Kirk Cousins as your starter. You might be like, look, I got somebody in my flex, my second flex, who I'm not sure about, but I love Tannehill's matchup. If he's going to give me 10 more points, I would rather get 10 more points out of Tannehill in that play, replacing him, than rolling the dice on a flex guy I don't know. The quarterback's going to continue to put up these monster points where I would not be shocked if next year you're looking at teams drafting and being like, whoa, he needs a okay, I guess he's got another quarterback. Okay, I guess he already handcuffed his running back. You might start seeing people skip those roster fills just because the better players you both have touched on is going to be better for their roster in the bye weeks. That's one thing I think is going to happen. The second thing is, and this is for our non-season long fantasy players, we don't do as much DraftKings FanDuel weekly fantasy. So I'm talking about, you stack the lineup. And that's exactly the term I want to use here. You hear the term stack the lineup, you get like Deshaun Jackson is always the great example of all time. Robbie Anderson's another one. A low-priced wide receiver in those that has an 80-yard touchdown and he has a huge number. It feels like the stack is slowly coming back. I know there's some people who just love to do it. They love having like Mahomes and Kelsey, Cousins and Jefferson. It seems like more people are doing it. In the Gozilla League, we had Rigney, who stacked Chargers. Chad, I know it was half a joke, but we saw a manager that he shared with us on social just went all Bills. Sean Martin went the Raiders. It feels like, look, it's crazy to think that the stack is so risky, but man, if you get the right offense and it's consistently good, it's still, I think back to the Colts teams with, if someone told you 20 years ago, you had Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James, and Marvin Harrison, would fantasy owners have been like, it's a lot of risk on the Colts? No, it's not. They're all Hall of Famers. So I wonder if the stack is really going to be real evaluated in 2023.
I mean, Kyle's been playing fantasy football with me for the better part of a decade. And I don't think I've ever taken a quarterback as early as I did in Dynasty because I wanted the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs stack. Diggs was my keeper. I love him. I think he has a chance to be a top 5 wide receiver again and has the potential to be wide receiver 1. However, I still really like Gabe Davis. I like Dawson Knox. I like Isaiah McKenzie. I like James Cook. So it's almost like you give yourself insurance. And now you're just rooting for the offense. Yeah, you want Josh Allen to throw to Diggs. But if Josh Allen does well, Josh Allen does well for my team. It helps you no matter what. Another great stack this year. So there's a couple offenses like this that I think it makes perfect sense where you want a really good quarterback. You want his number 1 weapon, but there's also great weapons around. The Broncos, the Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton stack. But Jerry Jeudy might have some games where he goes off, and you're still happy because you're getting a part of those points with your quarterback. Herbert's another good example with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Get one of those wide receivers and the quarterback, and you're going to have a lot of exciting Sundays because no matter what, that offense is going to put up big numbers.
Well, we also had this conversation 2 years ago with the Chiefs when Patrick Mahomes was coming off the Super Bowl. We're like, why wouldn't you grab Patrick or Travis Kelce 1, Tyreek Hill 2, Patrick Mahomes 3? And so on and see and whatever it ended up being. And when you looked at that, you could be like, yeah, that's going to win you a fantasy championship.
Here's a question for you guys. I actually posed it and I meant to do the research and I didn't, full confession. But we joked about that tweet where I saw someone drafted from top to bottom, every single Buffalo Bill. And that maybe that is the correct answer, but what do you guys think? What would be the offense you would want to be most invested in? I think the only flaw you see in Buffalo is we don't have a clear picture of the running back room. And as for Dawson Knox, he's a home run tight end. Like it's either touchdown or bust as opposed to, I don't think he's going to get a lot of, I don't know if he will get a double-digit target game. He's more of 5 targets and you hope one of them lands in the end zone. So is Buffalo your pick? Is it, I kind of lean maybe Chargers where you have QB2. This is in terms of ADP. QB2, RB3, what do you like, wide receiver 10 and 15? It's all going to be about if their tight end can also produce. Who he is getting some hype as well. Everett.
I think you hit 2 of the 3 teams that are potential there. I'm guessing guys has the exact same. The Bengals with Burrow, Mixon, Jamar, Higgins. Their tight ends.
Hayden Hurst at tight end.
Hayden Hurst, yeah, and he's been getting a lot of love though. Yeah. So he has, and then you have Tyler Boyd, and then there's one more wide receiver that's sitting there that you could use in your.
Don't forget about McPherson, the kicker.
Yeah,
McPherson, go all the way.
You're McPherson, baby.
Yeah, I mean that. I think those 3 teams are the 3 that you can look at. And no, of course they're in the AFC, so that's great.
It's so weird too because like the Broncos and the Bengals. I don't know if I'd argue. Maybe the more so the Bengals. Like they're actually in the discussion as the best offense. The Broncos aren't. But fantasy-wise, they are because remember, running backs Williams and Gordon. So there's a week that one of those guys could go off, the other guy stinks. But a true back-to-back running back, the Packers are in there somewhere, but it's hard to figure out who you trust at wide receiver, right?
The
What about
Vikings, yeah.
Vikings, yeah.
Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson. I mean, you give me that trio, I'm feeling pretty good. For
Plus
some reason,
Thielen.
that one doesn't feel as sexy to me. I don't know why. Like, if you separate them, I'm excited. If you put them all together and I'm like, here, all my chips are going to Minnesota, I don't feel very good. You feel a little queasy at 12:30 p.m. every Sunday that I'm like, oh my God, I'm having all my money on Minnesota. I don't know. I think compared to the other ones we've mentioned, I probably would lean Chargers and Bills over Vikings. Bengals, I don't know if, Kyle, we joked about it in years past. I don't know if I can ever get over Joe Mixon.
Nope, he'll forever hurt us.
I know.
Forever.
Like, he was great last year. He's been great for most of his career. Most of it's not his fault, but like, yeah. And I have, again, zero investment in Joe Mixon this year. And he has great games. I think it's his lack of pass catching. He's not the most efficient. And now I think this year, again, we're just going to see a really high potent passing offense. And so I don't know, Joe Mixon, I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know why I don't like you.
A lot of good things could potentially be on the way for some managers and what you see in 2023. Now, one of our long-standing segments here on We Talk Fantasy for years has been our Week 1 stars. Now, the fun part about this is we've seen this segment evolve over the years. We used to do over-unders, we'll call them. We used to do position-based. And this is the great part about having a podcast for year after year. You get to change things and find out what we thought was the most successful and what people really like the most. So we are going positionless this year. So if Chet likes 3 wide receivers, he's giving you 3 wide receivers. If Ray likes 3 running backs, awesome. We're going to try to keep it quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Those are the positions. We're not reevaluating kickers and defenses, anything else. So those 3. McPherson, right. Before we give those Week 1 star plays for you, we want to tell you about our friends over at Mohawk Honda. The fall is officially on the way. The summer is coming to an end, but your tailgates, your road trips, the football games you want to see. Ray's a Buffalo Bills fan. He's heading Western New York a bunch of times. Chet's going to find out how often he's going to be visiting family with the baby in the car and how often the baby's going to scream. And I feel like I've been to Central New York more this past month than, you know what? I love my family. Anyways, Mohawk Honda is going to help you get to those spots. Find your new vehicle. 2022s are now starting to come off the line. 2023s are on the way. Take advantage of the supply chain where you can get yourself a new vehicle and trade in your own vehicle for the same price you originally paid for. And now so many people are talking about, I haven't bought a car in a long time. I got to make sure I do it, but I don't like the experience. Go with people that you can trust during the car buying experience. Not that pushy salesman that can't get you off the lot. And people start to tell horror stories about that's not how it happens in Mohawk Honda. When you work with great people like Cam McKenna, Brian McKenna, Greg Johnson, Lindsey Harridan, MJ John in service, who every time I've talked about Mohawk Honda the past 3 weeks, it reminds me I have to go there. And yet here I sit with a maintenance vehicle light on that I still haven't fixed. Don't worry, Mohawk Honda will take care of you. Gozilla Media will be there live Thursday, September 15th. We got Week 2 football on the way and a lot of great stuff to talk about. Come join us there again Thursday, September 15th, when we broadcast from 4:30 to 6 at Mohawk Honda in Glenville, where they always go out of their way to please you. If you guys don't mind here, I would like to go first on this segment for my Week 1 star picks. All right, because I got a lot of things I don't like and do like about these picks. Because one rule we've made this season is if you've got, especially in Week 1, like you're not picking McCaffrey or Henry or Kupp. Like we're staying away from the guys that are obviously not leading out of your lineup. When we get to middle October, November, and we start moving through the waiver wire stuff, great. But I'm looking at players that people are not thinking about. And right before we started taping, we've got news involving the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mitchell, a.k.a. Mitch, a.k.a. whatever he wants to go by this year, has been named the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I love Mitchell Trubisky Week 1. I think it's a fine play. By the way, we're using projections for the Dynasty League. So half-point PPR, we're going to use the ESPN projections if that's cool with everybody. So just keep that in mind when we're doing that. 14.8 is what I see here for Trubisky. His matchup against the defense, middle-of-the-road defense he's playing against, but Trubisky's been named the captain. When he's been successful, he's put up points. He's a former first-round draft pick. He played for the Bears. If Mike Tomlin has said, I'm going to let the Steelers run with this guy and not start a first-round pick who's from Pittsburgh and Kenny Pickett, Trubisky must be torching people in camp in a good way. My first play, Mitchell Trubisky for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I hope so, man. I really hope so. I'm pulling for Mitch this year. But yeah, I mean, with all of those weapons, a lot of people invested in Najee. A lot of people invested in Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. Yeah, hopefully Mitch can get them the ball. I'm also going to go quarterback, and it's a guy that you're going to hear a printer going off, by the way. I hope that doesn't distract people. Printing off my notes. No. We were high on him in the preseason, and I was a little surprised at how low the projection was for week 1. Once again, I'm looking at the ESPN Dynasty. So it's standard quarterback scoring that you're looking at for this. And it's Derek Carr. He's another one of those guys that was available so late in drafts around that Russell Wilson grouping with Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, which just seeing those guys sitting there, it's like, what did I do wrong in this draft? But Derek Carr is looking at a 16.0 projection against the Chargers. It is in LA, but in terms of home field advantage, it's kind of non-existent at LA. We've seen how empty those stands can be. But he's projected lower than Trey Lance at Chicago, Matthew Stafford against the Bills with the bum elbow, which everyone's curious how that's going to look in week 1 against a really good defense. If you got Derek Carr as your backup, I might. Is that super loud?
It's almost not bad.
No, it's good. Yeah. I like the effect. It's great.
Like I'm really crunching the numbers over here. Even Aaron Rodgers at 19.6 at Minnesota, I like Derek Carr over. So yeah, I think he's kind of in that must-start range if he's your second quarterback you got late, or if you got him as your first one and you're looking for the reassurance. I think it's a great play this year. I really think all year it's a team that's going to be in some shootouts, and I expect that to be the case against the Chargers, which is a really good offense. That whole division can put up some serious points. So Carr is going to have to sling it every single week, and now he has Devontae Adams. Like, they should be able to put up a lot of points, and they're going to have to go through the air. I like McDaniels in that, leading that system now. It was a team that started really hot a year ago in terms of passing. So yeah, give me all Derek Carr week 1.
I actually had Derek Carr until I went with my trend, so I'm glad I didn't stick with Carr. I'm going to start off with a wide receiver, and I'm going to go Juju. Only at 10.2 points. He's obviously the wide receiver 1. And he's going up against the Cardinals. Now, I shared a fun stat with these guys in our chat a while ago. Kingsbury is like a ridiculous record in the first half of the season. So what does that mean? He always comes out swinging. That offense always seems to come out firing, putting up points. Hey guys, Patrick Mahomes is still on the Chiefs. He's still going to throw the ball. And then last year, Arizona was the 25th team in terms of passing touchdowns allowed. So they allowed one of the most passing touchdowns allowed in the NFL. So didn't give up the most yards by any means. They were actually one in the bottom half, only allowing 3,600 yards last year. But I don't see how you can deny what Juju, if Juju doesn't get hurt, 10.2 seems very easy for him. If you ask me, you got Kelsey competing for targets. You got Juju. You got a little bit of Mecole Hardman sprinkled in there. Maybe some Sky Moore will try to get him involved early on in his first rookie game. But who else is getting the ball? Maybe CH. I still think
MVS, but that's a deep threat. Like,
yeah,
people were throwing that name around a lot, and it's like, yeah, MVS is with Patrick Mahomes now. He had Aaron freaking Rodgers and was never a consistent fantasy player. Like, he's kind of a one-trick pony. So I'm with you, Kyle. I don't see a lot of possession targets competition with Juju. I think he's the guy that he's going to have to rely on.
He's big enough too that Patrick Mahomes loves running some of them drag routes. Juju might run some of them drag routes at 10, 15 yards, and he's big enough to take a hit. He'll get that 15 yards. He gets that 5 times. Right there is, if the yards add up to about 7.5, there's 10 points right there just on receptions and 75 yards. That's not including his red zone capabilities, because he has a great leaping ability to get the peak of the ball. And again, it's Patrick Mahomes. He'll put the ball where it needs to be to get there. So I love Juju in week 1 with a shootout coming out in Arizona.
And like with Travis Kelce, I feel like Kelsey's going to get so much attention over the middle of the field that there are going to be pockets, like you use Hardman MVS to try to simulate what Tyreek did for years and years and years and try to take off the top. Linebackers and safeties are going to focus on Kelce if you have Juju on the other side, doing crisscross and hooks and oh my gosh, I could see it has the potential. I texted you guys, one of my my wish list items for 2022 is that Juju stays healthy because I need him in the dynasty league. We added a wide receiver position, which I highly recommend. I think it makes it so much more. I know this is Gaz's first year in dynasty, and in the standard league, he's played in plenty of standard leagues where it's 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a flex, and a tight end. But it forces you to make tougher decisions in that wide receiver slot, and it gives her a little more value as when all the running backs are going. It's like, hey, I'm going to get my wide receivers set, and that was my case with Juju, and I really hope that he can return to that. Was it 2018 when he was one of the top receivers in the NFL?
Yeah, you mentioned 2018, 2017 when he was a rookie too. Like you talk about early careers. Odell, Chase, Jefferson, Juju was in that conversation. That feels so long ago that people mentioned him in that same breath of all-time great starts to a career. Now, this might blow your mind here with this next pick because I'm sticking with wide receiver. That game that Chet mentioned, that Niner-Bears game, and Ray and I talked a little investing before we hit record on this. Something I'm a little nervous about from the sports wagering side. Home teams getting points in week 1 as underdogs. So you've got the Jets, you've got the Bears, who both stink. More so the Bears. I have a bet active right now. That's the NC State Wolfpack to win the ACC plus the Bears at the worst record in the NFL. There's a lot of strange sports books that probably didn't take that bet recently, but I say that for this reason. In 2020, we all thought the Jaguars were going to be the worst team. They won in week 1. Last year, we all thought the Houston Texans were going to be the worst team. They won outright in week 1. This year, I think the Bears are going to be the worst team. So I'm taking Darnell Mooney, 10.7. 10.7 is the projection for Mooney. I still think they're going to stink, but Chicago's got to throw the ball to somebody. And Mooney's been the best target so far through the summer. Justin Fields, Chet said this earlier too. Everybody was good in college. Hopefully Fields is better than what he was last year. The Bears have made some changes within the organization. David Montgomery's fine in the backfield. But remember San Francisco, that weird Lance Garoppolo thing, which is the biggest BS ever. There's a market for quarterbacks. That's just a lie. I don't know if they believe in Trey Lance. So you're telling me you got questions at quarterback. Their running back position is a mess. They cut Trey Sermon. Mike McDaniels is in Miami. And Debo got paid. I assume it's going to be the same Debo Samuel, but maybe the workouts aren't as hard when you got your money. I like Chicago potentially to win outright because of the performance by Darnell Mooney. That is for our sports investors. Watch out for Chicago for an upset week 1.
Can you guys just keep picking my players, whether it's Gozilla or Dynasty? It makes me feel good on the inside. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna, you know what? I had a different player going second, but I'll stick with wide receivers. Really surprised that this guy wasn't projected double digits. Granted, he missed it by 0.0, no, just 0.1. 1/10 of a point away from double digits. And that's Allen Robinson on Thursday night against the Bills. He's projected 9.9. Whew, numbers are hard right now. 9.9 in half PPR. The Bills are going to do their best to slow down Cooper Kupp, right? We all agree it's a great defense. It's also a great offense. So if Buffalo can keep up the pace that it had last year and comes out swinging, Matthew Stafford and the Rams and Sean McVay, they're going to have to throw it. We don't know the status of Cam Akers, how healthy he's going to be. That's their workhorse running back. So if this turns into Matthew Stafford having to throw 30 times, how many of those targets go to Allen Robinson, who will likely be working with a lot of man-to-man coverage? I like that all day. Give me Allen Robinson in his first game in an LA Rams uniform, opening night. Again, I think McDermott's going to do everything he can to make sure that Cooper Kupp does not beat the Bills. So you take away Kupp, Allen Robinson could have a monster game 1. You probably drafted him as a wide receiver 2, maybe a flex play. Feel good about putting him in either of those spots. I think he has a big week 1.
Yeah, and I'll throw another thing to kind of beef that point up. He's going to be going up against a rookie in Kaiir Elam, his first game ever. Now, Elam's looked good, but he hasn't gone up against a Robinson yet. So that'll be interesting, and it'll be I am very interested to see what they do with Micah Hyde and Poyer. I think the other guy that's poised for big game I didn't have him on my list is Higbee, going right up the middle and blowing the top off the overhelping safety. So we'll see what happens, but I actually really like that. I'm going to stick to the theme of wide receivers because, all 3 of mine are wide receivers. DJ Moore. I'm going to go with DJ at 12 points. And I have no real stats or anything behind this besides DJ is with the best quarterback he's ever had. And Baker is going to throw the Browns to death. Quote, he is going to F them up regarding the Browns week 1. I will tell you what. I think the Panthers will beat the Browns. The Browns don't have enough on offense. Nick Chubb can't do it all as much as I would love to say that he can. He's not going to be able to. And I don't know if they're going to be able to throw the ball around a little bit, as poor as that Panthers defense is. But say the Panthers get up 28, 21 points. They're going to be like, go ahead, Baker, throw for another touchdown. Oh, Baker, go ahead. Oh, Baker, you want one more? Go ahead. And DJ Moore is going to be all for it. So give me DJ Moore. I think he's going to have a career day to open the season to show what the Panthers could be. And everybody's going to overreact because it's the Browns, and everybody's thinking that the Browns defense was good. I like DJ Moore going for 20 this week over 12.
I like him for the whole season, man. DJ Moore, I think, is going to have a monster year. My last one here, we're going to play the who is this? They'll guess the player, okay? Yep. This player, over his last 5 games where he was healthy, has averaged 15 carries, 90 yards. The defense he gets up against in week 1 allowed the 3rd most fantasy football points to running backs last season. He also plays for one of the most productive, arguably, statistically, the best rushing NFL offense from 2020.
Elijah Mitchell.
That's a very good guess, but no.
Rashad Penny.
Also a very good guess, but no. I'll give you a very big clue. He also did not score a touchdown the entire season.
Oh, dang it. I just said that in the group chat.
Miles Sanders. It doesn't make sense, right? Like, it doesn't. He's on the best rushing offense in the NFL, and he's the running back who didn't score a touchdown. That makes 0. And even those stats I just gave you, 15 for 90 is great. That's 6 yards a pop when he's touching the football. He hasn't stayed healthy. We all said it. He can't get the end zone. He's going like 29th. He's like 35th in some leagues when it comes to ranking running backs. And out loud, that should not make any sense. 2 leagues I wanted Miles Sanders, and I trashed him last year, and I was right about it. But somehow, because he's going so low, and that projection, by the way, is 11.9, dude, just get in the end zone. Just get a couple catches. Just do something. Like, I don't know how often managers are even to start Miles Sanders, but those stats out loud should tell you he should be in a lineup. But again, that big one. Didn't score a touchdown last year. Lions defense has been fun to watch on Hard Knocks, but I got to see some production. I'm going to take Miles Sanders. That's actually my favorite play of him.
He's going to score over Rodrigo? Come on.
Other side. Run away from Hutch and Rodrigo. Yeah. Audible at the line hurts.
But, like, I could totally see Coach Sirianni being like, hey, let's end this drought right now. You know what I mean? Like, Miles Sanders had to answer that question every week of the preseason of how'd you not score a touchdown? Why? He sees it on Twitter, sees it on Instagram. They're going to want to end that just so they can end that storyline. Hey, we got in the end zone. Don't ask us that question again. Give him the Nick Saban. I'm not going to answer that question. I like that. Miles Sanders, I think we were all shocked when we saw how late Miles Sanders was available in some of our leagues. And just like, why is he still there? I think he slid way too far. Another guy who slid in most drafts, but I already mentioned his name once because he did not slide in Dynasty. He was the opposite. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire week 1. 10.5 against Arizona. Cardinals were bottom half in run defense last year. We talked about it with Juju. There's a lot of new pieces, and I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for guys to step up. Travis Kelce is the only one that's a for sure slam dunk in that offense with Patrick Mahomes, of course. But I think Clyde's going to get a lot of touches, yes, Pacheco's a good storyline. Not going to happen week 1. We'll see. Clyde's going to get the opportunity to win that job. If you want to say win it back, to solidify that spot, to make sure going forward he continues to be the RB1 that they thought they were getting when they drafted him in the first round. So against an Arizona defense, I think Clyde's going to get, in the 15 carry, 5 to 6 catch range, and 10.5, find the end zone once and you're crushing that. So I like Edwards-Helaire as an RB2 or a flex play this week.
All righty. Last but not least, I'm going to go Goz's boy. Mike Evans is only listed at 11.6 going against the Cowboys. And again, Dak Prescott, he loves to start hot. Dak Prescott, I think for the last 3 years has come out and just thrown the ball around and has just dominated and been like, oh boy, here comes the Dak Prescott parade. And then the Cowboys. But for real though, who else is going to get the ball? Godwin, I know is practicing, but he's doubtful to play. I'm waiting. Like, who else?
Yeah, that's about it. Fat Net, Leonard Fat Net.
Fat Net. But listen to this too. The last 6 games for Evans averaged 80 yards per game, 6 catches on an average of 8 targets. In his 2 playoff games, he had 10 and 16 targets, 6 touchdowns. I'm also including
touchdowns. Woo!
I'm also including that Saints disgusting game 9-0 win over the Bucs, where just nothing worked at all for the Buccaneers. So I love Mike Evans this week. They're going to have to throw the ball. There have been some blows to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I don't think that their offensive line is going to be what it has been in the past by any means. But that just gives Tom Brady more of a reason to say, go get it, Mike. And then when you go against the most overrated cornerback in the league in Trayvon Diggs, Tom Brady's going to pump fake him once, and Mike Evans is going to go for an 80-yard touchdown. So I love Mike Evans at 10.6. Again, I think he's going to easily break that this week. And I can almost guarantee he's going to get a touchdoon.
It does feel good when people pick the players on your favorite teams and your favorite fantasy squads. It feels so good.
Kyle, is that going to be one of your bets?
I'll do a beer bet on that.
No, not a beer bet. I mean, that would be a good parlay right there, right? I'm
anytime score.
Anytime score, Mike Evans. That could be a nice one. So I'm with you. I think he's almost guaranteed to find the end zone.
We have to do one other thing before we close, and hopefully some people haven't fast-forwarded into this part because our Dynasty friends and our Fantasy Football League, our Gozilla Media friends, we're going to name who we believe, not naming ourselves because obviously we think our rosters are great. What team roster is the best? And maybe you listening might have similar players, and you're going to get even more excited when we tell you about the players top to bottom roster-wise, teams we like. But before we do that, we got to tell them our friends over at Lily and David Fine Jewelers, Route 50, the shops of Wilton. Shout out to Alyssa. Shout out to David. Everybody. A great year they had out in the summer, Saratoga way. When people were making the road trip up there, they stopped over to Lily and David Fine Jewelers and found exactly what she was looking for. I will still stick by that we should all outlaw fall weddings, but until that's not a thing, you can stop in there and buy engagement rings, wedding bands, 2-for-1 wedding band. It always helps you save cash. Lily and David Fine Jewelers can help you do it. Now, maybe you've, for whatever reason, decided to have a fall wedding. You can celebrate that anniversary with a great gift thanks to Lily and David Fine Jewelers. And for football fans like us, let's say you're telling your wonderful wife or fiance or girlfriend, I plan on watching Red Zone until my eyes bleed for Sundays Sundays until the playoffs. Here's our best advice. Go apple picking this week. Buy something nice from Lily and David Fine Jewelers, and then you're good for weeks to come. Lily and David Fine Jewelers, helping you find exactly what she's looking for to fit her style, her fashion, and more. When you stop in, tell me you heard about Gaza's story from We Talk Fantasy and more here on Gozilla Media. Since I guess I just gave myself the segue there, let's talk about the Gozilla Media League first. Guys, any roster that jumps out to you that after that draft you feel like's the best and for what reasons? Ray, I might start with you, unless, Chet, you have one that jumps out to you.
I got one.
Oh, that was quick. Okay.
I did a little research, a little bit, 5 minutes before. Since we can't pick ourselves, no, I'm going to say Run CMC is the one that jumped out to me, and that's Taylor. What's Taylor's last name?
Lattimore. And by the way, Chet, while you're talking about that, I'm going to pull up his team because that is also my pick. We will save time on this. Here is Taylor's team. I also agree with you on this.
Yeah, and it's kind of sad. I didn't even notice this till right now, but at the top right-hand corner, when you look at this team on a computer, it shows the draft grade. And they only gave him a B. And I don't know where the flaw is. I mean, I guess you could say tight end Zach Ertz, but from top to bottom, Jalen Hurts, top 5 potential. Love the wide receiver potential with Michael Pittman and Juju. Also has Jerry Jeudy sitting there in his flex spot. On his bench, Romeo Doubs, Rondell Moore. I love both of those players. Alec Pierce, more of a sleeper dart throw there. But then a running back, especially in a 14-team league. I think he was picking at position number 2 here, and that's how he was able to get Christian McCaffrey. Coupled that with James Conner. I think there's going to be some regression there with Conner in terms of touchdowns, but not a lot of competition in Arizona to get touches. So if James Conner is the workhorse again, that's a solid RB2. Again, Zach Ertz at tight end, questionable for week 1, might not even play week 1. He does have Irv Smith there to back that up. Running back is also thin after the top 2, and that's the case for just about everyone. Alexander Madison and Tyler Algier are his 2 guys. But for a starting lineup, I don't want to face run CMC at this point.
And let me just add one other thing there. What's even more amazing, the roster is laid out like he has the number 2 pick. Here's what's more remarkable. He has the 5th pick and built that roster. Yeah.
5th?
The top 4 went like this: Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Derrick Henry. He got McCaffrey at 5.
He I guarantee he never dreamt of. Nope. He was probably assuming he was getting a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Either Jefferson, Kupp, or Chase. Wow. I did not expect him to have the 5th pick there. That's awesome.
Ray, I know that's going to probably be tough to beat. Are we all 3 on Run CMC? Or you got another roster you want me to pull up for you?
We are all on Run CMC, but I will give honorable mention to the most painful honorable mention that I think I could ever give in the Gozilla media. I don't hate Levac's lineup by any means. Yeah, sorry, Levac. You got good old Josh Allen and Justin Jefferson as your 1-2 combo right there. I think there's just an ungodly amount of boom potential there. Go to wide receiver 2, who I'm high on this year. I think I got him in. This is the only league I didn't get him in. Rashad Bateman. I'm big on Rashad. I think he is a significantly better upgrade to Marquise Brown, and I'm fairly confident he's not going to drop as many passes as Hollywood did. Running backs, Etienne. I think we talked a lot about Travis Etienne. We're a little worried about that offense, but if there's a guy that's going to blow the top off that offense, it's this guy. If he can stay healthy, he can be a top 10 running back. And to have him coupled with David Montgomery, I'm all for that. I love David Montgomery. He's probably one of the hardest runners in the NFL, playing for a really poor Chicago team. And just every game you sit there and go, oh darn it, I'm going to get nothing from him. And then boom, they finally get down to the red zone and Montgomery punches it in. Freiermuth, who's going to be the safety blanket for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got to hope for. And then you got Damian Harris, who, again, we talked about a lot earlier. Will he be the guy? I don't know. But if he is, you're in great shape. Then when you look at the bench, I really like Olave and Michael Carter as just some random guys in there that, could potentially have some saving graces for bye weeks.
I like how Levac and Dan have become the full heels of this league with their trade last year, and then Dan calling Chet out for week 2, and then Kyle calling out Levac's team. They have fully gone bad guy NWO, and I think they both embraced the role of being the heels of the Gozilla Media League.
That's interesting, Kyle. So you think that Levac's one of the best teams, but you called out Levac?
I called out Levac?
No. Dan called you out.
Chet. Oh.
Yeah. But they both have embraced the bad guy mentality. Yeah.
Gotcha. I was like, wow, that was a bold pick, my guy.
Yeah.
I also, this is fascinating to me. Did you guys ever realize that when you click, like I'm on Levac's team right now, and it shows that he's been on Yahoo Football since 2003, and I can see his overall record from forever.
Yes.
A 51% winning percentage. I love that. He is a winner. Levac is a winner by 1%.
I would laugh, but I think mine's around 48%.
Ooh,
I could be wrong. Double check me, Chet, while you're doing that. While you're doing that, I'm going to let Ray start with his best team. Yeah, find out Goz's history on there. My baseball stuff is far better, I think. Find out what I'm looking at. Ray, who is your team in the Dynasty League that you believe has the best roster?
I'm trying to find it here. I had it, and now it's gone.
If you want, so. I have mine up.
Guys, go.
You are 48%, by the way.
Go ahead, Chet. Was I right? 48%?
48%. Have you never won in Yahoo?
I've won, I believe, 2 leagues in Yahoo.
Okay, so that's what I don't understand by this best finish. It says silver. I don't know what that means, but
2017 is a championship season. I think 2019 as well in a different league.
And one last thing before we move on to the Dynasty League, I would like to note that Yahoo, with their it's almost as bad as PFF grading, did give Goz an A- report card, better than both of the 2 teams we previously mentioned. So I see you guys. I see you under the radar a little bit with number 1 pick.
Kissing up the Yahoo is what I like to do. I feel nice and safe. Our guy's Kyle Breen is the team I like. Now he's changed his team name. I feel I feel like for our visual side, I'm going to say it's too dirty for the young kids out there. So I'll just roll down to the roster. His roster looks like this: Jalen Hurts, Joe Mixon, James Conner, Darnell Mooney, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Dalton Schultz, Cam Akers, Packers, and Nick Folk. I think it's important to note J.K. Dobbins on the bench, by the way. It's important to note, Chet, he had an extra first-round pick, right? So that's why his...
No. He's the one that did not have that. Nope. That's a natural. It's a natty lineup.
Well, a natty lineup for that. I know there was a Team Chambers out there as well. I re-looked at his roster. I like this one a lot better. A lot of balance, a lot of speed, a lot of big numbers, a lot of consistent touchdown scores. That's a really good team that I like coming out of the Dynasty League.
Guys, that was because I was looking for his old name and not that one. That's why I was like, where is it? Nope. I like Breen's team a lot. For all the exact same reasons. And you don't have all that like firepower on the wide receiver, but like you said, the touchdowns are gonna come with those guys, I feel like.
I actually lean a little bit towards Chambers. And for people that were like, what's the extra pick? I traded him my first round pick, which ended up being pick number 2. So yeah, he was able to get Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley in the first round, which in a competitive dynasty league, getting 2 RB1s is quite the accomplishment. But I love Lamar at quarterback for Chambers. I've talked about it before. I think he's going to have a huge, you can't call it a breakout, but return to his MVP form. The concern with running back is age and health. That's what his problem is going to be with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. Both guys, coming off injury-prone seasons. We all know about what the tread is on Derrick Henry, but if he does stay healthy and continues to prove us wrong, like he does almost every year, could be another scary season for Henry. At wide receiver, this is a 3 wide receiver league with a flex. He's got Keenan Allen, Brandon Cooks, and Hollywood Brown. We trash on Brown a lot for the drops. He's going to get a lot of opportunity in Arizona with the DeAndre Hopkins suspension, and he's playing with his former college quarterback. So there's no like getting familiar with the guy. Like Hollywood's going to get a lot of targets and a lot of opportunity. So I think that's actually that was one of his keepers, I believe. So that was a good keep. Darren Waller at tight end, and then Montgomery in his flex. He also has Edmonds on his bench, so he's got some good depth with Amari Cooper on the bench as well. A dark horse pick, like my honorable mention for this, Kyle, you're going to be shocked, but have you checked out Jake's team?
I didn't like it.
You didn't like Jake's team?
I like his running backs. Everything else I'm very mediocre on.
He's got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback.
What is his team name for the visual audience? What is his team name?
West Coast.
West Coast.
All right, thank you.
Clams.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, he's got a picture of one as well. Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, which Jake is just obsessed with Mahomes. Like he drafts him first every year. But Kyle mentioned the running backs, Alvin Kamara and Leonard Fournette as your 1-2 punch with Devin Singletary in the flex for running back. And I actually like the wide receivers. Chris Godwin report just came out. He practiced today without a knee brace. Like the dude's built different. Like his recovery time has been extraordinary. So Chris Godwin to go along with Mike Williams, who was one of his keepers with amazing value. Tyler Boyd, he's going to get left out of that offense in certain weeks. Like if there's an injury to the top 2 guys, whether it's Chase or Higgins, Boyd is going to get a huge boost. But week to week, he's going to struggle a little bit there. So that's one flaw. I love Kittle at tight end. Not as good as the top 3 guys at that position, but Kittle could also have he has the ability to finish as tight end 1 week to week. And he's got Evan McPherson. So, like, come on. The guy's going to obviously have a successful dynasty year.
The 2 things I like about this team, Jake's team, you can feel like he's a 1 trade away. Like if he starts off 3 or 4-0, he's going to make a big play and get a really good team because there's a little bit of, you could see some donuts potentially coming early or like some bad plays that really says like I'm 1 away. Back to Chambers' team. Of all the teams we've talked about today, both Gozilla and Dynasty, 28, 26 teams, that team in particular, I feel for him as a manager because we all stress on game day of who we're going to move into certain slots. He's got some ones that are going to decide badly, like wins and losses. Like you mentioned his bench. He is going to be one of the kids who all year long is going to be screaming, like, if I had so-and-so, I would have had. Yeah. That team is just going to drive him nuts because there's so many every week on that team.
Yeah, and looking at this lineup you have on the screen right now, I think an easy swap there is putting Devontae Smith over Tyler Boyd.
Yep.
I think that becomes a scarier lineup. Devontae's the number 2 compared to the number 3 for Boyd. And I still believe in the talent of Devontae Smith. I think having A.J. Brown's only going to help him. Year number 2, I think Devontae Smith could have a nice season this year. Quick thing, did you guys see kind of the big news on Twitter today for fantasy football? And Kyle, you're not going to like it.
No.
Allen Lazard's questionable.
Oh yeah, he's been questionable since last week. Well, he's
officially. They just got the designation today.
Yes.
And the confusion was, or I guess what's stirring up some confusion is when they were talking to Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, he actually said that the rookie Watson, is that his name?
Christian Watson, North Dakota State, baby. I got him in a few leagues. Let's go.
Could be able to play. Could be eligible to play on Sunday, and then was non-committal on Allen Lazard, who was sidelined last week for undisclosed reasons. The heck does that mean? And this is
happy fantasy football.
People laugh. They're like, I think one of our friends, Jeff Fazio, was telling us like, hey man, like we're out of the preseason games, like we're good. We're good to draft. I'm like, dude. Someone can step on a rock and tear their ACL any day.
Hint the Ravens last year.
Yeah, exactly. With J.K. Dobbins, like practice still happens and guys still leave the facility. And this is not in a joking matter, but look what happened to Robinson in Washington. I mean, terrible, scary situation. Gets mugged at his car and shot. Like nothing is a for sure thing when it comes to what happens to these guys. I completely missed that Lazard was dealing with anything. I feel like that flew under the radar for me. And now I'm like, I have Lazard in some leagues. I'm like, what? Huh? This is supposed to be the dude. And now everyone's like, oh man, Sammy Watkins gets a big boost for week 1 while those hamstrings are still intact. Did one of the rookies have a big day? Yeah, that one had me, my jaw dropped a little when I saw that tweet. And that was from Tom Silverstein from the Milwaukee Journal.
I think that's the best way to sum up this episode as we head into week 1. Projections, keep an eye on social media, be ready to make a move. And by the time we talk again next week, we'll have a lot of reactions of, are you ready to trade away players after bad performances? Are some of these guys the greatest fantasy players of all time? Football and fantasy is coming very soon. All right, guys, I'll catch you again next week. Enjoy your rosters for week 1. Enjoy the football coming up.
Say, boys.
Go Bills.